Hi, I'm CJ Wildheart, and you're watching Black Velvet Magazine.
Good to speak to you again, CJ. You released one of the boys at the end of March, and you sing "When the curtain falls, just one of the boys." So, what are the most important things when it comes to being one of the boys, and what does it mean to be one of the boys?
For me, just being it's not saying I'm like, one of the lads going down the pub and watching football. It's 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 uh it's a metaphor for just being a normal everyday person. Okay. There's a lot of anyone who gets up on stage and expects people to pay and watch them up on stage, whether you're a musician, an artist, a comedian, an actor, you've got to have an ego because you straight away believe you're better than the person on the other side of the barrier, on the other side of the stage, and they've got to pay to come and see you perform. And basically, when you strip that all away, if you're still performing and you're still up on that stage, then you've got a problem. And I'm basically saying when that curtain falls, I'm just one of the boys. And it's also a metaphor for someone coming to the end or the last part of their career, the last part of their life as well. Just looking back and, realizing it doesn't matter what I've achieved or what I haven't achieved. At the end of the day, I'm just like everybody else.
Oh, I thought when you were saying one of the boys, you were talking about, being a member of the band, like almost like a gang.
No, no, I don't mean it that way. No, because I'm in the song. I'm looking back at and admitting I've made mistakes. A lot of the problems I found myself in have not all from me, but I've contributed to problems in my life, and realizing that you're not perfect is a lesson everyone has to learn. Because if you can't see your flaws, how are you going to try and make them better? Make yourself better. But it's just basically when the curtain falls, I'm just one of the lads, I'm just one of the boys. It's not um it's me standing on my own saying that. It's not me standing with a band or a group of other people. Yeah.
So you sing "When I tasted fame, I got it all so wrong." So what did you
Hmm.
get wrong?
Just about everything. I mean, uh, there's a privileged club in the music world, all right, and not even a percent of all the musicians in the world get to sign big record deals, get to tour around the world, get in the charts, get on radio, TV. It's a very exclusive and very small club. And if you're fortunate enough to have signed very big record deals, I'm not talking like small deals, I'm talking big record deals to big corporations, you get a machine behind you. And what you get is thousands and thousands of people all over the world working to try and make your music really, really popular. And if you don't embrace that machine and you fight against it, then ultimately you're stabbing yourself in the eye, and you're mugging yourself. And it's I was a member of a band who constantly mugged themselves, and we were given endless chances. And I felt, myself and everyone in that band didn't really appreciate the chances we were given and the platform and how privileged we were to be put in that position. So yeah, when I tasted fame, it's not just I got it all wrong. We all got it wrong, and it's well documented. And no one would look at that band and say, "Yeah, that is the formula for success."
Do you wish you'd had someone who helps you stop getting things wrong back then? Was there anyone to help you?
Oh, not impossible. No, I mean, one of the things I firmly believe in is you choose roads, you make decisions, you make choices, whether they're good or bad. You have to still believe in what you're doing. And I never look back and go, the only thing I would change if I could go back is I wouldn't be a musician, I'd be a chef now. And you'd be interviewing me in my restaurant, or one of my restaurants. That's the only thing I'll change in my life, is I wouldn't go down the rock and roll path. But all the mistakes, all the good things we did, all the bad things we did, all the great things we did, they were done for a reason, but they were done we weren't forced. No one held a gun to our head ever. No one's ever held a gun to my head. All the things I've done, all the things, mistakes I've made, all the things I got right, have all been, done under my own steam. Yeah. And no one could have changed that course, or, kicked us off that road. That's the road we chose to go down.
Do you think most rock musicians get things wrong in the early days, like, when everything's new and fun? Is it like part and parcel of being a young musician to make
Yes, I think it depends what genre you're in, but we came from that kind of rock and roll background, and there was no way on earth we weren't going to go, and emulate, people we used to like, look up to as kids. We were going to do drugs, we were going to get high and get drunk, and we were going to be bad boys. It was destined. It was just, that is the road we were walking down. But there comes a point where you've got to knuckle down and you've got to play the game if you want to progress. And even the baddest bands in the world, the ones who became very, very famous, they played the game. You got to, and we just didn't. It's. I think the biggest mistake the Wildhearts made, let's say, was blaming our record labels for us, when we should have really looked at ourselves and just put our hands up and go, yeah, we were Muppets.
So in the art of being free, you sing, I've got to get away from here. So in relation to bands, what makes a musician need to get away from it? Do you think that it's
Right.
the close proximity of, being on tour in the studio and together with each other so long?
Well, I mean, I have a solo band now, and I could quite easily spend the next year on the road with all of them. And it's in the art of being free. What I'm saying is getting away from that rock and roll thing, because it's poison. All right, if you're touring all the time and you're getting high and you're getting drunk every single day, and it's relentless and it goes on and on, there's going to be some casualties. There just are, and that's what I'm singing about, getting away, because it was mental. And fortunately for me, I stopped when I was 40. I stopped doing all that nonsense, and I should have stopped a bit earlier, but I did get out of that rock and roll game. And someone said to me, musicians, especially ones who are signed like big deals and work at a certain level, it takes them longer to grow up. It's because you're basically kids who are just, they're diving into the smarty jar, aren't they? And they've just got their hands in there. You're getting everything thrown at you. But yeah, yeah, everyone's got to grow up eventually. You just got to, or else you're going to end up a casualty.
So you played a couple of shows at the weekend in Carlisle and Kirriemuir, I think. So you said they were life affirming. Why were they life affirming?
I meant to say like reaffirming. Right. I didn't want to play the shows, if I'm honest with you. I've done like hundreds, thousands of shows over my career. I did my first show when I was 16. That's 42 years ago. So I like playing at a certain level, which I'm not at anymore. I like having a full crew, a tour bus, and I like to play in front of, 1,000, 2,000 people a night, and I don't do that anymore. So sometimes, you kind of look at the shows, and it's like, do I really want to do this? Do I really need to do it? Is it gonna, like, help me in any way? It's like, so I looked at these shows and I was like, I came really close to cancelling them. Not because I'm like some miserable sod, because I still have a bit of pride in me. And it's like, I look I look at these shows, and sometimes if you look too deeply, you can feel like you're taking a step back from where you were 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 30 years ago. And so I went into these shows like, man, it was a bit of a test for me, but Carlisle was amazing. And I've played there with the Wildhearts, I've played there with my solo band, and it was the best time I've had it at that venue. But the show was just, it was brilliant. It was for me. It was almost like a lifeline because it pulled me back. I'm so close to walking away from this, but both those shows have kind of put their hooks in me and they're kind of pulling me back into the game, which is great. Yeah.
I was thinking, like with your new album, Devil, um, I had a listen and like some of your other solo albums, it's very punky, quite, punk rock. And I'm thinking a lot more punk fans would love your music, and I don't know whether your music gets out to punk fans. So I imagine, you've got all the Wildhearts fans, but is your music getting out to punkier fans, real punk rockers?
I tell you what, it's been one of the hardest things in my career is to try and reach like the true punk rockers, because I don't come from that background. And although my music is, especially my solo music, I mean, it's people describe it as punk. They say it's punk and roll, but you need to listen to the new single. It's very punk. But what I have noticed on the new single is a lot of old punks are getting into it, which for me is a real compliment when you get those old true punks getting into my new music. Of I'm an older musician, I'm seen as a new kid on that sort of scene. But it's I always knew it was going to be hard because I don't come from that background. So, but if an old punk rocker likes my music, it's a win for me, definitely.
Hmm. I was thinking you do like really well at Rebellion Festival, or supporting some bigger punk bands. Would you?
Yeah, I had a slot at Rebellion last year. I was offered one, but unfortunately, I had to look after my son. And there ain't a festival or a band or a show in the world that's ever going to take me away from my family. So I had to turn it down. And I was kind of hoping to offer me the slot again this year, but I must have pissed someone off. But yeah, it's no biggie for me. You know, uh, I will play if I'm offered gigs, I'll play them. But if I can't, do them because of family commitments, and unfortunately, the gig is going to get picked in the bin.
Right. But you are playing the Scott Sorry tribute show in Wolverhampton later in the year. And you
Yes.
wrote that the moments you remember most fondly of Scott were not being on stage or in the studio, but when you were just mates and chatting and having a laugh. So tell me about being mates with him and how he impacted you as a person.
Well, we used to hang out a lot, me and Scott, when we were on the road, but like on days off. And there was, what was that? The Wildhearts album. It's the album me and Scott didn't really like, Chutzpah. Its songs are good, but we didn't like the kind of Euro production on it. And but during the recording of that, we were locked away on a farm in Denmark for like a month in the middle of nowhere, and it was pretty dull. And we used to escape to the nearest town, but we had to get bicycles. We didn't have any cars or anything, so we were lent two bicycles because the nearest town was about maybe 10 miles away. So we had to cycle. So when we weren't working, we'd cycle. Me and Scott would cycle to this town and get very drunk and try and cycle back. And they're the moments I really remember with Scott. Little things like that. Not so much being on stage. It was just hanging out and trying to, we used to go and ride by the sea and stuff like that. Or, I remember once we got told off for being in a barn on a farm. We were just exploring and stuff like that. And they're the moments you remember because, there's so many rock and roll moments with so many different bands and friends and other musicians, and they're all the same really. But, there was always these little things, I did with Scott and Richie as well, and sometimes with Ginge when we were wandering off and stuff. It was they're the moments you remember, you know. They're more special and they tend to be more normal moments. Yeah.
Yeah. So talking about your new album, Devil, so would you say there's been a progression with your solo music? Like if you look back to Mabel and then look at Devil, do you see any differences or changes or growth?
Yeah, I mean, my music is definitely. I think there's a scrappy edge I have to my vocal and to the sound as well. Mabel has its tongue firmly in the punk rock and pop camp, but as I've progressed, I think I've got kind of heavier. There's a bit more fire in a, I've always believed that as you get older, you shouldn't mellow. You should. I want to go out on fire. I want to go out screaming, and the last thing I want to do is slow down and mellow out as I get older. I don't think that's a requirement of old age, is to slow down and get mellow. So if anything, I want to be more punk and more screamy and more shouty. But the one thing that goes through all my solo albums and all my most of my bands is melody. If it doesn't have that hook, if it doesn't have that melodic hook, then it isn't my music. I'm not making it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always been one for like, energetic songs. If a band put out a ballad, I'm not so into the ballad. I just prefer, upbeat, catchy songs. So
Yeah, I mean, I want to wake up when I hear music, and I've always liked music that I mean, it's the world is dull enough as it is. You know, I like to get the heart going. I like people singing along and jumping. It's one of the reasons why I like dance music so much, is because of the effect it has on me and, half the world. It makes them want to get up on their feet. And if anything makes you want to get up on your feet and get moving, then it's a good thing.
yeah. So you've got a song called Diva. You sing I'm Not a Diva. Have you ever done anything remotely diva-ish?
Yeah, millions of things, But I mean, that song was when I got accused of being a diva for asking for a bottle of water and a towel. I got accused of being entitled. And I just wanted to say to the idiot who said that, it's like, you have no idea. You have no idea some of the things I come from a band who were like some of the biggest divas on earth, but I mean, yeah, when you get a certain degree of success, you can't, sometimes it goes to your head. So when you have your tantrums, they are going to be like full blown ones. But we've made diva requests and stuff like that. But yeah, asking for a bottle of water and a towel is I mean, if someone thinks that's diva behavior, they need to get out of it more and
Yeah.
hang around some real divas.
Well, do you think it's easy then to become a diva? Like when you get to a certain success, you get loads of fans. Do you think, in the entertainment industry as well, do you think that, it's quite easy to be a diva?
Yeah, yeah, very easy because when you get to a certain level, you've got a lot of people around you doing stuff for you. So when you've got you're touring with a full crew, and so you've got PR people, and you've got a manager, you've got cooks on the road with you, people setting up all your gear. You don't need to touch anything. You turn up, everything's there. Your rider's there, whatever you want, it's on your rider, and you're basically it's like they're like your servants basically. They're doing everything for you, so that affects people. And if you live that way for a very very long time, when you're not in that environment, you take yourself away from the environment, you're kind of expecting the same treatment as well. And one of the things which was really grounding, especially for me, was although I spent many, many decades touring at a certain level and having crew and having stuff done for me, um, I spent an equal amount of time having to do stuff myself as well. And like the last tour I did was the Ricky Warwick tour last year. I was driving the van, I was selling the merch, roadieing myself, and playing in the band. And it's times like that where I realized, as much as there's been diva-esque moments in my life, my feet are firmly on the ground, and they've always been stuck on the ground.
Yeah. So if you could inspire others, how would you like to inspire them? Or what would you like to be remembered for in the future?
um well, the one thing I'd say to like musicians out there, it doesn't matter how fast you can play, there seems to be an influx of people just playing really, really fast online. And that don't mean anything. My dad could play the guitar, and I didn't know until I found a guitar in the basement of my block of flats where I lived in Germany. And he picked it up and tuned it up and played something. And I knew my dad's family are all, all could play and sing. They're all musicians. My two uncles moved to New York to join bands in the 70s. And I said to my dad, teach me something. And he said, no, no, no. I'm going to get you a book. You teach yourself. And I go, but just show me. He goes, no, if you teach yourself, you might not learn properly. You might not play, or you might not know what you're playing, but you'll have your own style and you won't play like your teacher. So I just learned basic guitar, and then I started writing songs. So the one thing advice I give to any budding musicians out there, don't worry about playing really fast. Don't worry about all the chords or learning all the scales. Worry about writing songs, because you could be the best guitar player in the world, and if you can't write songs, then what use is that? Write songs. It's power. If you can write songs, it's probably the most powerful tool you can have. If some of the greatest songwriters in the world aren't the best musicians. Yeah, so it's the power is in the song.
And you've got some quite important songs on the album. You've got No More, where you sing, I saw a photograph of the world in a better place. So how would you like the world to be?
Um, Elements of the world's never been perfect, and uh, I ever since losing my parents, I lost them very close in the space of like 19 months, and it's like a few years ago, and I was never nostalgic, and I've become really nostalgic, but it's not. I'm not missing what it was like in the 70s, the 80s, and 90s. What I'm missing is my parents. I want to go back and see them again, but I have a very young son. I'm 58. My son is 11. So, I'm not the oldest dad in his school. And uh, what I see in the world today isn't the world I saw when I was a kid or when I was a young adult. And I really worry about what the world is going to be like in 20 years' time when he's still a young adult. And it really concerns me. And the seeing that picture, seeing the world as a better place, is me looking back at my childhood and me looking at my boy's childhood. It's so, it poles apart. And but saying that, the racism I feel that's coming up in this country reminds me of the 70s and the 80s. It's like it's so like it's so on the surface now. It's not hidden anymore, is it? It's in your face.
With
Yeah.
all like the English flags and stuff.
Everything. I mean, when I first came back to the UK, there was still like NF tags on the walls and stuff like that. And, I'd never really came across, I was about, 14, 15. I never came across skinheads. I grew up in the army. We didn't have skinheads in the army. I went to army schools and you couldn't get away with that sort of behavior. But, we'd also, but coming across that sort of political stance wasn't. I grew up with racism, but having it like gangs of skinheads and stuff like that, it was a different, you know, form of racism. It wasn't like, people sniggering behind my back, or, it was in your face. They wanted to beat the shit out of me, basically. And I, I I worry about the state of the world at the moment. I think any normal person would feel exactly the same. No one's going to sit down and go, the world's a good place at the moment. There's something very unhealthy about the planet we're living on right now.
Yeah. In 999, you sing about it being an emergency, and you sing, we're fighting a war and blood on my hands. How does it feel seeing, the images of wars and bodies, in the news? How does that affect you?
It affects me massively. I mean, one of the things I use my music for is because on one of my albums, you can have a song where I'm talking about the state of the world. I'm talking about the wars going on, you know, bodies in the street. And then in the same breath, I'm reminiscing about the good old days, or, you know, I'll have a song about my wife on there and or my son. And one of my ways of dealing with everything I see on the news, everything I see going on in the world is those sort of emotions I put into music. So there'll always be an angry song or a few angry songs on my album because I'm exercising those emotions and you've got to let it out somehow. But I don't think anyone can look at the news right now and if you've got a smile on your face while you're looking at the news, there's something wrong with you. There really is, you know, and it doesn't matter what side you're pushing for, what side you believe you're fighting on. You know, the minute innocent people are being killed, especially children, then you've lost. There is no argument, there's no discussion, you've lost.
Yeah. I usually try and avoid the news now because, you know, it's too much bad stuff going
You
on.
know, I when my boy arrived, Josh, I stopped reading books altogether, and I became an avid viewer of the news because I'm a firm believer of having your eyes open to what's going on. But I don't just watch one type of news. I watch right, left, center. I want to get the whole picture. A lot of that's got to do with the way I grew up because me and my brother and a handful. I can count on one hand. We were always the only brown kids in a school full of white kids. So we had to keep our peepers open and we had to have our wits about us all the time. And we had to become friends with a whole group of people and they all had different, you know, beliefs and outlooks on the world. So, but in amongst all the negative stuff, there's always these little diamonds of something really positive, really, really funny. And one of the things I love about social media is the how much comic stuff gets thrown at me, really funny stuff. And I think that's the lifeline. That's the bit which keeps you sane, is there's so much beautiful things and so many funny things in the world and there's so much good in the world. So I think you've always got to remember that, or else you'll just end up like a miserable bastard. And I've never been like that. You know, there's a lot I can smile about and fall in love with still.
So the album ends with Fade. Is that about your parents?
Yes, yeah, yeah. So as I spoke before, my parents, you know, died like in the last like 4 years. They've both gone in the space of about 90 months, and they both had dementia. So my dad was a lot further down that road than my mum. I mean, my dad forgot most of us, and I mean, he couldn't speak. You know, I mean, I didn't have a conversation with my dad for the last sort of 5 years of his life, and with my mum, she was starting to go, but it was awful when my dad passed. I had to stop telling my mum, you know, that my dad had passed because she just would forget. And so I just used to pretend to her that, you know, he's fine. And they were in different homes as well. And during lockdown, they didn't see each other for 16 months. And they weren't allowed to meet up. And, you know, it had a profound effect on me and them as well. And my mum went somewhere and never came out of it again. And so I had this song because when people have dementia, they fade away in front of you, and it's really slow as well, and they slowly fade away. And I've always had this song, but I couldn't record it or finish writing it because it upset me too much. And when I first recorded the song, I couldn't listen to it again. So I recorded the song, and then when we were getting close to putting the drums down and getting close to mixing, I think I better have a listen to the song. I better force myself to listen to this song and not feel upset. And I'm not upset now. I love the song, but it captures the frustration and the hurt of losing someone, seeing them slowly fade away. And there's a line in there about the council up here, North Yorkshire Council, stole all my mum's life savings, stole her assets, and they stole it. They, you know, all for the sake of, a measly few quid. But they could have, there's a lot of rich people out there who get away with a lot more. And yeah, I'll never forgive the council and the social workers for what they did.
Was there no, do they not let married people go to the same home then? Was the reason they were at different ones?
Yes, yeah. My dad needed a nursing home. He was very sick, and my mum needed a residential care home with a dementia unit on it. And also, my dad's my mum's pension and her assets couldn't cover a my dad was in a home which cost maybe 2 or 3 times more than what my mum was allowed to, and it there's a hierarchy basically, and it was a mess. The social services really messed up, they put my dad in the wrong place. He almost killed someone. They wanted to section him, and I said, he's got dementia. Should have been in a nursing home. He should have been on a unit with big guys, and you messed up. You assessed it wrong, and I was going to sue them. And in the end, NHS stepped in, and there's a thing called continuing healthcare where the NHS will pay for your care, and they paid for my dad's care for the last 4 years of his life, and looked after him. But my mum was a whole different thing. They swooped down like vultures and took everything from her. But she was so far gone, she didn't know what was happening. Yeah, but it happens a lot. I hear stories from a lot of people, their grandparents or their parents having all their assets stripped. Yeah.
Do you think there's anything we can do to avoid getting dementia, like in the future?
I mean, it, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know if I'm right, but I believe there's more people now with dementia than there ever has been. And they don't, I mean, it could be something to do with diets. It could be something to do with, the way we're stimulated now. It's a lot different. But I don't know. I mean, I know my parents, and I know my dad. He would never have wanted to end his life the way it did, with in the homes and stuff like that. He wouldn't wanted it. He couldn't see, walk. He wore a nappy. He couldn't talk. He was on a liquid diet for the last 2 years of his life. And he was a soldier and he's a proud man. And personally, he should have been put down 5 years before he passed, and my mum 2 years. And if I had the means, I would have put them out of their misery, because if they were a cat or a dog, you wouldn't be dragging them around the park on a lead, if you know what I mean. And there's a humane way of approaching the end of life, but people at the end of life make a lot of people a hell of a lot of money as well. End of life care is a big business, and it's all about the money, all of it.
But going back to the song 22, if you could go back to when you were 22, is there anything you'd do differently?
Right. So 22 isn't about the age 22, it's about the year 2022.
I wonder.
The whole song is about the tour I did with Richie Baxby and Scott. And it was us three coming back together and working together for the very, very last time. And it was a great year. My favorite number is 2 as well. So it had some synergy. There was something special about that 2022. There's a lot of 2s in there. And it was about that year. And I'd love to go back to 2022. I'd love to see Scott again, and I'd love to go out on tour with Scott and Richie. Yeah, and they're like my buddies. So and it was wonderful. Such a good tour. Yeah.
So, but what about if you could go back to when you were 22 anyway?
What would I do?
Yeah,
I
differently.
would leave the Wildhearts and then go to college and become a chef. um, I didn't know until much later on in life how much I love food and cooking, and my real passion is in food. Yeah. If you can play me music, but if you give me a dish that'll just, I mean, my wife, my friends, they when I get food I love, they're like, my God, it's like you're talking about Jesus, or you're talking about, the world's most perfect diamond. Because food for me, it feeds the soul, in a way music never did. Yeah.
Make more vegan food.
Hmm?
Make more
My
vegan meals.
well, my wife's a vegetarian. She's been a vegetarian all her life, but she worked in. I've been to many restaurants. I've only ever eaten in one decent vegan and vegetarian restaurant, and that's at Terra Terra in Brighton. And it always wins like competitions. It's best restaurant in Brighton. That food takes days to prepare, and I have eaten in vegan and vegetarian restaurants all over the world, and that's the only good one I've ever eaten in. So you come at me, vegetarians, but go to Brighton Terra Terra if you want to have proper vegetarian and vegan food. It is off the scale, amazing.